You are listening to Digging In Podcast, presented by Rooted Wealth Advisors.
Welcome back to another episode of the Digging In Podcast. I'm your host, Kincho Kelly, helping you get those questions answered to and through retirement. Today, I am joined by the founder of Rooted Wealth Advisors, Mr. Zach Gray. I've been watching too much WWE, but I heard the crowd. It was intense, man. It was intense.
Next time we're gonna get that Bulls intro music cranking in here. We'll be ready to go.
That would be
fired
legit.
Up.
I'll fire up the
I'll wear
smoke
some
machine.
J's, get a spotlight.
Standing 6'4" out of the University of Illinois, something like that.
Not quite there.
Okay, I'll work on
at least
the
on my
intro.
stat sheet.
Okay, all right.
Got those doctors to kind of fib those numbers.
We can
a little
beef
bit.
that up. Yeah, we can beef that up. How you doing today, man?
Well, that's all I got.
we
Better now that I'm thinking, like in my mind, I'm daydreaming about running out and Jordan's there and we're chest bumping.
I know.
It's just.
I know.
I got goosebumps. I'm about ready to run through this wall.
It's
right
intense.
Here.
It's intense. We're gonna have to plan it more for next time so that we can put together a legit.
Where is
intro.
Jordan? Did he show up today or not?
You don't.
Mike,
No.
let's go.
That's an implied sponsorship deal. Oh man, we are off on the deep end. But speaking of Michael Jordan, what I think was always underrated was Phil Jackson when he played, because not only did he have to manage Jordan, but he had to manage the pieces around Jordan. You grew up in the 90s in the heart of Illinois. You got to see those teams. You got to see Phil Jackson on the sideline drawing up on his little whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take some inspiration in that in coaching your team?
Did you get to see them live?
I never got to see those 90s Bulls teams live, only on television.
Me too. I just was going to, have a newfound respect and or disdain for you if you got to, because we never got to do any of that cool stuff. But you're correct. And I think, and Phil speaks for himself, right? I mean, like he just goes and replicates it elsewhere. Got an interesting vibe about the guy. Cool cat.
I mean, really cool cat. I mean, you're talking reaching to the far depths of like Native American culture to bring out some coaching and a little of this and a little of that, obviously referred to as the grandfather of the triangle offense, right? But I think I've always admired, and the Jordan documentary that was on ESPN a few years ago has made me really appreciate Jordan and Phil Jackson, just the player development side, how he had to cater to such personalities like Rodman, and we've seen what that guy's kind of become. And as you look at coaching some of your own financial advisor, some of your team, as you look to build the firm around you, any lessons from Phil Jackson that you've taken, or what are some of the kind of the coaching mentors that you've looked to over the years?
Yeah, I don't know from Phil Jackson per se, but it's tough. It's the toughest part of my career is to step back and try to make sure that we can scale this. And I think a large part of that for us anyway is to make sure that our clients are served in the right way, and we sure hope that we're always living up to that. I can't be everywhere at once. It's just impossible. We can't continue to grow and scale if everyone has to sit down at the table with me. And so then thus it becomes, how can we get the team? And by the way, just an amazing team. But I myself have had a lot of coaching and strategy, consultants, trying to make sure that we do our best. We sure fail at certain times, no doubt about it. But yeah, I think that, coaching, it's incredibly important. Culture that we've kind of put a more firm focus on over the last handful of years now. Still needs improvement, still can improve every single day, but critically important to the success of the firm.
Now, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for, it's not quite a decade yet, but we're getting up there. And I think what I've always admired about you as a mentor and friend, and even going back to the very first time we met, you were seeking out coaching. Now, it was for the professional side of things, but as we've gotten to know each other over the years, you've always sought some help, right? And like, I don't mean that in a bad sense, but you've always valued other people's coaching and mentorships and sought out some growth for personal development, for professional development, for your marriage, for to be a better dad for your kids. Where do you think all of that, number one, stemmed from? And number two, has that always been something that's just kind of in your DNA, that you've always kind of sought help to get to whatever level that you're hoping to attain in those different areas?
No, wasn't always a part of my DNA. Frankly, it might almost be the flip side of the coin. But I do think that you're right, and there's a very odd irony here to having an advisor maybe even help you with your retirement plan. My belief is if you can pay for the shortcut. You know, we've made some jokes in past podcasts about medical and health and so on, very serious things. But I'm not going to be the WebMD guy. I would just like to go to like the best in class, maybe cross-check that with another best in class, create my conclusion, and proceed if that need be. Sadly, at the end of my football days, that's exactly what I did with some back surgeries. It was like, all right, this isn't working out. This is what this one says. Let's go compare that to a few others that I would deem to be very professional, and let's make the best choice possible. Paying for the shortcut, though, is my point. Sitting there, suffering it out, so on and so forth, trying to remedy it myself would have probably been extremely poor choices and easy to be seen in this little example. I also believe in paying for the shortcut now, if at all humanly possible, with my own coaching and hopefully kind of self-improvement journey, whether that be, yes, for myself, from really even like a therapy side to a coaching side, my marriage in the same facet, coaching, but also even maybe from a therapy position and even from a team perspective. And so sometimes when I look at that, I even start to wonder, man, we got a lot of coaching going on here, but each and every single one of them has been important. I mean, many of which over the years, strategic coach was kind of my intro to entrepreneurship coaching. I currently have Pastor Keith Kraft is a really great friend and mentor, really kind of helping on my faith journey, but also in business. We have a local coach, if you will, counselor coach, that I check in with, and that the team, as you know, has the availability at their free will, and also obviously in a private, confidential manner to have those discussions. And it's just taken care of. It's just a part of, the package of benefits here at Rooted Wealth Advisors, because I believe in it so much. And so I think without those thoughts, I probably would have never thought bigger, tried to stretch a little bit further. Grew up in extremely small town America. And so getting to think about having, an office, let alone multiple offices, or now multiple states, a lot of things we can improve upon, a lot of places that we can make better strides, but I just would have never even opened my thinking to it.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, because you said it wasn't in your DNA. So at what point are you looking at whatever facet of your life? Let's say, let's take the business coaching for a moment. At what point do you say, man, I could really use some help in this area? How do you identify that? And then secondly, how do you decide who you're listening to? Because it's no secret that there are abundant number of gurus or internet experts out there, right? Just one scroll on Twitter and everybody's an expert in, you name it, whatever. So how do you go about deciding who you're really going to listen from?
Well, there's no issue with small town America, working yourself into a family business or farm or something of that nature. And I might have had that opportunity. It didn't probably suit my skill set. My brother, which I love dearly, has kind of worked himself into some of those roles, and it suits him much better than it does me. What I think was probably the eye-opener for me, though, was just even trying to get to even like the next level of showing cattle or football. I started to realize that, trying to do this on our own was not getting us to the place that we wanted to go in the cattle arena, for example. We kind of had to band with and kind of get pushed in the right direction from some other folks that knew what they were doing much more than what we did, paying for that shortcut because you only had this certain window of time, right? You can only play that game, for this, say, decade window, give or take. No different than the correlation to sports, right? I know that your son Teague's a good baseball player. He's playing with some travel teams. He's maybe getting some outside coaching, some different insight. That, though it might just kind of fall into place or seem as if it does, it doesn't, right? That's a choice that you have to make alongside your family. And I think that when I saw it at the university level, even maybe before that, I went to a combine. Don't know how I got invited. My dad drove me down to St. Louis. I mean, I didn't have a clue what they were doing. And I started to realize that here it was, me and my dad got up in the morning, went down there. I had a conversation. I mean, I'm a fairly introverted individual, and when dropped into the sea of different folks I've never met, though a few were making comments about like having their coach on the sideline, or having their speed coach on the sideline. I'm going, what is a speed coach? Talking about getting in a few days early so they could get the proper rest. We grabbed a Casey's, couple donuts, got up at 4 a.m, still ran a 4.7 flat, by the way. Boom. And by the way, that was the first time that it had ever done electronically. I'd only seen people running the stopwatches. Didn't even know such a thing existed, right? But I think it was an eye-opener to me to be like, wow. I see it now with my 7-year-old daughter. She's on this local swim club. We love it. Do it pretty much for fun, though I'm a competitive guy. And you will see 8-year-olds that have private swim coaches. They're up and down the pool. I'm going, who's this guy? Who's this gal? Oh, that's her coach. I'm thinking, that isn't the coach of the team. The coach of the team's over there. No, that's their private coach. Now I think that's a whole nother conversation for a different day. Your son traveling to multiple states. I don't remember that as part of my Little League baseball. Cattle being at the level of which it is, or show livestock, or, once again, even as we start to think about maybe business being the adult sport. But I think it is important to kind of stretch your imagination and your thinking. And it started then. And then when we, got to a point of, I'd never flown private until I was on scholarship at the U of I. I was introduced to some folks that were very successful, either on the football field or, even in business, or maybe they were a prior Illinois alum that became very successful. And it really did just start to at least intrigue and kind of, push the envelope there a little bit. And then when I did have some success in this industry, starting to go to maybe some higher level conferences and so on, where I was exposed to some great speakers, some great influence, but rubbing elbows with the people that kind of put that perspective in place. And I've tried to take that to other aspects of my life. Frankly, my circle's gotten smaller and smaller, which is not always a great conversation or thought, but it probably aligns with myself. And I think just where you want to grow, to answer the second part of your question, I think number one, take attention to that. But secondly, make sure that we've heard the joke before, right? Of you probably don't want to take fitness advice from the trainer that's obese in size, right? Or at least you better be asking some questions why. And I think that's probably the easiest filter that I've seen is I mentioned kind of a faith-based coach. I know that I want and / need to improve that. And so thus I start to lean in, and then I go, oh, and by the way, he's successful in business. I like that. Oh, by the way, he considers himself a think coach. What is that? And it just starts to kind of prompt this thinking, and it goes on and on from there, right? I mean, I do have a trainer that I jump on Zoom with. I despise it, hate working out, but I know he's the accountability partner that I need because I know where I fall short. Because without that, I'd have the best of intention of going for that workout, but it probably just wouldn't happen. I would say that make sure you're focusing on, or at least what I've started to look at is, hey, who has those things that you're chasing? And that's a really good filter, because taking marriage advice from someone that's been divorced multiple times, things happen. Not saying it's good to stay in a bad marriage, anything of this, no wild thoughts here. Just you might start to go,
So what I hear you saying, because that was a very lengthy answer, but what I hear you saying is paying for the shortcut really means finding somebody at that next level, having that goal in mind, or having your eyes open to what that next level is, and then being able to find an expert who may already have experience in being there, or like has some insight on how to help other people get there, or have a proven track record of helping other people get there, so that paying for the shortcut isn't necessarily bad. It's you're paying to learn how to get there, and that there's already been a trail, so that hopefully you don't have to deal with some of the heartache or the financial struggles that it takes to get to that next level, because you're in essence taking a shortcut to get there. Am I off base on that, or is that a fairly decent synopsis?
Fairly decent synopsis, followed by, and I'll butcher the quote, but we become the five people that we spend our time with, or what have you. I think we've tried to take that approach as we've built this team. It doesn't always end up that way. Sometimes there's a role to fill, and we go, well, we don't know all the intricacies of this individual. You and I knew each other before you took this role. It's a hope that we at least have a little insight to what makes that person tick, and that we align on certain thoughts and in values and so forth. But yeah, I do believe that, and I've seen it happen more and more. I don't do a good job of this, I think, at times, because sometimes I get kind of into this pessimistic rut. But don't be afraid to dream either. And sometimes, and I mentioned Strategic Coach, but a good book that Dan Sullivan, which started that organization, came out with not too long ago, which goes right back to the comment you just made, is who, not how. Sometimes I get so into the weeds of how are we going to hit our annual goal? How are we going to do this? How can I start a new office, many hours away, many states away? And frankly, that's a lot. If you let those voices in, once again, not saying that's not worth contemplation, but if you let those voices in, many of the voices of even what I think are great people and actually mean well, lead with a question of, well, how are you going to do that? Or even maybe a comment of, it can't be done. We'll see.
I'm reminded of another quote about you can get a good look at a steak by, but wouldn't you rather take the butcher's word for it, right? The butcher's the expert in his field, right? Get an expert in their field to help and guide you along the way. You kind of stole my thunder for the last question. What would you recommend for personal development, for business development? I know you spend a fair amount of time on the road and traveling, so you're a big fan of podcasts or even audiobooks. So is there any book, is there any podcast that you feel like, hey, if you're really looking for expertise in this area, that this would be helpful? I know I'm putting you a bit on the spot there. Digging In's always a great podcast to listen to, obviously.
I always make sure that we listen to this one first. So disclaimer. I think that, sometimes it feels overwhelming. I think the first time that I heard, oh, he or she has a coach, oh, he or she has a trainer, oh, or he or she seeks marriage coaching, counseling. In my mind, dollar signs were running, and they still do. Because it is an investment. My question would be, where would you rather invest the money, right? If you can, I know you're a great dad. If you can, like, I'm a part of a front row dads group. I don't really even lean in or listen enough, but I want to glean whatever little pieces I can, because like where better to invest than to be in a hopefully the best father you can be, right? Or your kids. Like where else would you rather pour your, everything, right? And I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. I think it's just one of those things where it should be the number one place that we probably invest. And we know all this, right? We know nutrition. We know that we shouldn't, maybe grab the fast food. We should, invest in better foods, or we know we should work out. Sometimes it's just getting over that hump and in getting it to action. I guess where I started that rant is to let folks know it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be very simple things. I've got a devotional app and a coaching app I look at first thing every morning, and they're one of them's free and one of them is peanuts in cost. Darren Hardy has written a ton of great books, some of which I've had the entire team read. There's another Darren Daily subscription. Great advice, comes free every single morning. It's a part of my routine. There are some that do happen to be more expensive if you get to executive level coaching. Even from what I do on the training side, it's done virtually for ease, but ironically, it's less cost, substantially less cost. And it does the same for me. I mean, he's just barking at me through a Zoom screen. It's I'm usually like, you're breaking up. But I just don't want to scare people away or this to come across in a way that's like, oh, he or she did that, or can have gotten that counsel, or can afford such counsel, or anything of that nature, because it could be as simple as just having a conversation with your pastor at church. Great resource, or once again, a multitude of free resources. That's where I would say dive in. And then from there, if there are extra dollars or there's extra budget, just don't forget that there's probably no better place to invest than yourself, your marriage, your family. And in my case, it happens to be team as well.
Well, I appreciate the insight, man. I know it probably isn't the normal topic that we would cover on the podcast, but it's about being real and authentic, and also like giving our team and our clients just an opportunity to see who you really are. And I feel like that needs to be showcased a little more, because I've had the pleasure of knowing you for so long and just kind of seeing this growth and this trajectory that you've put yourself on, man. And it's something that's really cool, and that I strive for, like, as I look to you as a mentor to like help with myself for. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing it today. And if you've got any questions about that app that makes Zach Gray so special, or that secret sauce he uses on his Big Mac when he swings through the drive-thru, go ahead, give us a call, shoot us an email. That'll do it for today's episode. Until next time, keep digging in.
This was Digging In Podcast, presented by Rooted Wealth Advisors.